Baroness Fawkes.
My Lords, when I've previously queried whole swathes of illiberal legislation that have been put on the statute books, that, for example, makes it illegal to leave your own house without an explanation, or makes it illegal to mingle with friends in your own back garden, when I press for a date about when lockdown will end, can we know exactly when these things will happen, my queries are met with great irritation, and government ministers will say, "We're following the evidence, don't you know there's a pandemic on?" This is one statutory instrument where I would like to see that kind of approach, actually, whereas instead here we have, my Lords, very specific dates given, always time limited, always on the dot, always short term. And I just don't understand when especially homes are so important in this pandemic that the government be so mean-spirited on this question. You know, when I hear that phrase, that dread phrase of lockdown, stay home, it does definitely resonate differently across society. Stay home for some means saving money on the commute, or where to place the homeschool workspace for the children, or what bookcases are on display during business Zoom calls. But stay home for many people is how to rotate the kids' laptops on the dining room table in the cramped gardenless flat. And for this SI, it's about the fear and dread that whether staying home will be able to carry on, because whether one can stay and live in the same house will be feasible once lockdown ends. Because one of the greatest causes of anxiety are parents lying in bed at night worrying about debt and eviction, and many of those private renters are actually worrying about how to stave off homelessness for them and their families. So of course I welcome this temporary ban on eviction. I welcome it again. It was only a few weeks that we renewed it for a further few weeks. But it just feels too short-term and shallow to deal with the challenges of the continual closure of society. Surely the government realises that this is just storing up huge problems for the future. Tenants' debts are mounting up, and as my other lords have mentioned, other noble lords have mentioned vividly, this is not their fault. Many of them would never have got in debt before. They're using their rent money to pay fuel bills because they're not allowed to leave the house with their families. As the months drag on, furlough, which was at first welcome, now actually means a fifth cut in wages, unemployment delayed. And those who managed to juggle finances in the past often had a number of part-time jobs to make do, but you can no longer have an evening bar job or a shift in Debenhams to make up the money now because we've locked down. And as tenants' debts mount up, they don't stand a chance of paying them off. It's now clear that when lockdown measures ends, there won't be a land of milk and honey, but a serious economic depression with mass unemployment. And if furlough is just redundancy deferred, the inadequacy of this I'm afraid, is evictions deferred. And there's just no need, my lords. I mean, I genuinely don't understand why the government, for whom money seems to be no object during this pandemic, can't see that targeted loans and grants will get them out of this and help tenants and landlords alike. Why don't they write off the debt even and have a debt amnesty? A reminder that so many landlords that we're talking about who are also suffering are not property tycoons. Almost half of them only own one property, and for them, they've spent their life savings or their redundancy money on prudently investing in a buy-to-let for their income and pensions, and they too are now desperate. So I just want to finish by saying that the government have proved, through the magnificent vaccine rollout, that they can be impressive and swift and long-term thinking and so on, and solve problems. But the government have also, unfortunately, got a problem of making a mess of less challenging issues, from the cladding scandal and the throwing of leaseholders under the bus to the homeschool meals saga. So I welcome the noble lord to the chamber, but I'd appeal to him to not follow in the same suit of making a mess of this, because it's easy to solve. Just solve it and don't keep coming back with SIs for another few months.